Admiral James Walker stood at the viewport of Earth's orbital command station, staring at the ragtag collection of vessels that now constituted humanity's last line of defense. The ships, if they could even be called that, drifted in awkward formation, a mismatched assembly of outdated military vessels, converted cargo haulers, and hastily armed civilian craft. 20 years of budget cuts had reduced Earth's once proud space fleet to little more than a symbolic force. "Sir, we've received another transmission from the Meridian Fleet," Lieutenant Tom Davis said, his voice tight with tension. "They're requesting visual confirmation of our defensive capabilities." Walker sighed. "Let them look. They'll see soon enough." The Admiral knew what the aliens would observe: a pathetic collection of ships cobbled together from whatever humanity could salvage. The newest vessel in their fleet was 15 years old, and most were pushing 30. Some had been pulled from orbital junkyards, their hulls still bearing the scars of previous battles or commercial service. 3 weeks ago, deep space monitoring stations had detected the approach of the Meridian Armada. First contact had been established shortly after, and the aliens' intentions became immediately clear. They weren't explorers or diplomats. They were conquerors who had already subjugated 12 other civilizations. "Admiral, the Joint Chiefs are waiting for your assessment," Davis said, offering a tablet displaying the faces of Earth's military leadership. "Generals, admirals," Walker began, his voice steady despite the desperation of their situation. "The Meridian Force consists of approximately 200 capital ships and at least 500 support vessels. Their technology appears to be at least 2 generations beyond our most advanced systems." "And our chances?" asked General Roberts, the lines in her face deepening. Walker didn't sugarcoat it. "With our current resources, virtually none. But I've initiated Protocol Scrapyard. We're retrofitting everything that can fly with whatever weapons we can mount." The silence that followed was deafening. Protocol Scrapyard was a theoretical last resort strategy, never meant to be implemented. A desperate plan to arm civilian vessels in case of total military collapse. "We've called in every retired engineer, every military contractor, even university professors with relevant expertise," Walker continued. "The civilian response has been remarkable. People are volunteering their private vessels, industrial equipment, even museum pieces. It won't be enough," Admiral Chen said, her voice flat. "No," Walker agreed, "but it's all we have." The meeting ended with grim nods. Earth had 1 month before the Meridian Fleet arrived in full force. 1 month to prepare a defense with ships held together by patchwelds and prayers. 3 days later, the Meridian ambassador requested a face-to-face meeting. The alien vessel that docked with the command station was sleek and predatory, its hull a seamless expanse of some unknown metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Commander Vex of the Meridian Fleet stood nearly 7 feet tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, assessed Walker with obvious disdain. "Admiral Walker," the translator unit rendered Vex's clicking speech into English, "I have reviewed your defensive capabilities." And Walker kept his expression neutral. The alien made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You defend your world with garbage. Ships that should have been melted down decades ago. Vessels designed to haul cargo, not fight wars. Is this truly the best Earth can offer?" Walker felt his jaw tighten, but maintained his diplomatic posture. "We are a peaceful species, Commander. Our resources are directed toward exploration and commerce." "Peaceful species get consumed," Vex replied. "The Meridian Empire respects strength, not weakness. Your junk fleet is an insult to warfare itself." Behind Walker, he could sense his staff bristling at the alien's mockery, but he raised a hand slightly to maintain discipline. "Perhaps you would consider a diplomatic solution," Walker suggested. "Cultural exchange, trade agreements." "Here are our terms," Vex interrupted. "Immediate planetary surrender. Your people will serve as a labor force. Your resources belong to the Empire now. Resistance will result in the obliteration of your major population centers. The alien displayed a holographic map of Earth with 20 cities highlighted, beginning with these. Walker studied the map, buying time to control his anger. The people of Earth will need time to consider your generous offer. Vex made that laughing sound again. Consider? There is nothing to consider. But I will grant you 1 week, as is customary before we add a new species to our collective. It will give us time to properly document your pitiful defenses for our historical records. The alien gestured toward the viewport where Earth's makeshift fleet hung in space. Perhaps you should rename that collection of scrap the Suicide Squadron. After the Meridians departed, Walker immediately called his chief engineer to the command center. Dr. Alex Morgan had been retired for 5 years when the crisis began, but no one knew Earth's military technology better. The gray-haired engineer had been working nonstop since being recalled to duty. "They're overconfident," Morgan said after Walker briefed him on the meeting. "Good. We can use that." "They have every reason to be confident, Alex. You've seen their ships, their weapons." Morgan nodded. "I have. And I'd also detected something interesting." He pulled up sensor readings on his tablet. "Their shield systems operate on a variable frequency modulation. It's why our standard weapons would be useless against them. And," a smile crossed Morgan's weathered face, "and every system has a weakness, James. Even theirs, especially if they don't think we're clever enough to find it." Walker leaned forward. "What do you need?" "Every radiation specialist you can find, and access to the old nuclear subs we mothballed in the Pacific." For the next 4 days, Earth's command station became the center of the most unconventional military planning session in human history. Morgan assembled a team that defied all military protocol: civilian engineers, theoretical physicists, even video game designers noted for their unconventional problem-solving. "We can't match their technology," Morgan explained to the gathered team. "So we won't try. Instead, we'll use what they consider junk in ways they'd never expect." Old nuclear submarines were hurriedly converted into space carriers. Cargo ships had mining lasers repurposed as weapons. Museum pieces were pulled from display and rushed back into service. Every ship was modified in some way that defied conventional military doctrine. On the 5th day, a Meridian scout ship approached the growing Earth fleet for another inspection. Walker ordered all vessels to perform standard maneuvers, carefully hiding the true nature of their modifications. The Meridian transmission came shortly after. "Admiral Walker, our observers report that you are painting civilian vessels with military markings. Is this an attempt to inflate your numbers? Such deception is pointless." Walker allowed himself a small smile before responding. "Not deception, Commander Vex. Just making the best use of available resources." "Your best remains laughable," came the reply. "Our weapons officers have calculated that your entire fleet could be eliminated in under 15 minutes. Then perhaps you'll grant us a quick death," Walker responded, feigning resignation. The alien commander's final words before breaking communication were recorded and broadcast throughout Earth's fleet. "Death comes to all inferior species, Admiral. Yours will at least have the honor of being eliminated by the greatest armada in the galaxy, rather than your embarrassing collection of space junk." As the transmission ended, Walker turned to Morgan, who was reviewing final modification plans for the flagship. "Well, Doctor, will your theories hold up against their technology?" Morgan looked up, his eyes tired but determined. "Theory is about to become practice, Admiral. And if I'm right about their shield frequencies..." He didn't finish the sentence. Walker nodded and turned to face the viewport again, watching as more ships joined the growing human fleet. They weren't pretty. They weren't uniform. But they were humanity's only hope. "Project Patchwork is now officially active," he announced to the command center. "May our junk fleet prove worthier than they could possibly imagine." The converted cargo bay of the former mining vessel Resilient buzzed with activity as Dr. Alex Morgan hunched over a sprawling workbench. Around him, A dozen engineers and scientists worked frantically, their faces illuminated by holographic displays and welding sparks. The ship's cavernous interior had been transformed into an impromptu research lab, with cables snaking across the floor and equipment stacked in precarious towers. "Pass me the frequency modulator," Morgan called out, not looking up from the device he was dissecting. A captured Meridian communication relay that a stealth team had managed to recover from the debris of a previous alien encounter. Dr. Liz Reed, a quantum physicist who had been teaching undergraduates just 3 weeks ago, slid the tool across the table. "The radiation signature is unlike anything I've seen before," she said, pointing to the readings on her tablet. "It's almost as if their shields are designed to absorb energy rather than deflect it." Morgan finished her thought. "Exactly. But look at this pattern here." He highlighted a section of the data. "Every 67 seconds, there's a micro fluctuation in the frequency. It's barely detectable, but it's consistent." Reed's eyes widened as she processed the implication. A reset cycle. That would mean, for approximately 0.3 seconds, their shields are vulnerable to a specific radiation band, Morgan said, a rare smile crossing his tired face. "The Meridians are so confident in their technology that they never bothered to fix this weakness. Why would they? No species they've encountered has ever noticed it, much less exploited it." The scientist's excitement was interrupted by the ship's intercom. "Dr. Morgan, Admiral Walker is requesting your presence on the command deck." The command center of the Asterisk, Resilient Asterisk, bore little resemblance to its former function as a mining vessel's bridge. Navigation systems had been ripped out and replaced with military-grade tactical displays. The ship's captain, a former mining engineer named Jack Foster, had volunteered his vessel within hours of Earth's call for civilian ships. "Tell me you have good news," Walker said as Morgan entered. The Admiral looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. Morgan set his tablet on the central console, bringing up a complex diagram. "We've found a weakness in their shield system. It's small, it's brief, but it's real. If we can hit them with concentrated bursts of a specific radiation frequency exactly when their shields reset, we can create holes in their defenses." Walker studied the diagram. "How big are these holes?" "Not big enough for conventional weapons," Morgan admitted, "but big enough for something smaller, like modified mining drones." Foster stepped forward, intrigued. "My ship was outfitted with over 200 excavation drones before it was decommissioned. They're designed to cut through asteroid rock." "Could they cut through Meridian hull material?" Walker asked. Morgan shrugged. "We don't know, but we've analyzed the samples from their communication relay. Their hull metal is impressive, but not invincible, with the right modifications to the drilling mechanisms." "How many ships in our fleet could be similarly equipped?" Walker asked, a plan already forming in his mind. "At least 30, Foster replied. "Most of the mining vessels we've brought in have compatible drone systems." Walker nodded slowly. "Dr. Morgan, I want those drones modified immediately. Captain Foster, gather the other mining vessel captains for a briefing in 2 hours." As Morgan turned to leave, Walker called after him. "What about the nuclear submarine conversions? Any progress there?" "Better than expected," Morgan replied. "The radiation shielding on those old subs is being repurposed to focus and direct the energy pulses we'll need to exploit the shield weakness. And the missiles, well, let's just say we've made some interesting modifications." For the next 3 days, the human fleet underwent a transformation that defied all conventional military doctrine. Retired naval officers found themselves commanding spaceships. Civilian engineers redesigned weapons systems on the fly. University professors calculated targeting algorithms for weapons that hadn't existed a week ago. In a storage bay aboard the command station, Walker convened what he called the Unconventional Warfare Committee, a group that included military tacticians, video game designers known for their strategic thinking, and even historians specializing in ancient guerrilla warfare. "The Meridians fight like a traditional military force," explained Colonel Diane Parks, a military historian. Their tactics are sophisticated but predictable. They rely on superior technology and overwhelming force, not creativity. They expect us to behave like every other species they conquered, added Tom Lee, a game designer whose strategic warfare simulations were legendary. They'll anticipate a centralized defense, probably concentrated around Earth or the Moon. They won't expect scattered, autonomous attack units. Walker paced the room, considering their input. So we don't give them what they expect. No formation, no conventional attack pattern. He stopped at the holographic display showing Earth's mismatched fleet. We fight like junk. Sir, Parks looked confused. Junk doesn't have a pattern, Walker explained. It's random, unpredictable. Some pieces are valuable, others are decoys. That's what Project Patchwork will be. A strategy as cobbled together as our fleet itself. The unusual think tank spent the next 18 hours developing what would later be called the most unorthodox battle plan in human military history. Meanwhile, aboard the Resilient Asterisk, Morgan's team had successfully modified the first batch of mining drones. The small, maneuverable machines now carried specialized drilling equipment designed to penetrate meridian hull material, along with small but potent explosive charges. They're not pretty, Morgan told Walker during a demonstration, but they're deadly. Once they penetrate the hull, they'll deliver an electromagnetic pulse that should disable their systems from the inside. How many do we have ready? Walker asked. Almost 1,000, Morgan replied. And we're producing more every hour. The real challenge was creating the radiation pulse generators to open the shield gaps. We've installed them on 67 ships now. Walker nodded approvingly. And the nuclear option? Morgan's expression grew serious. Ready, but untested. We've converted the warheads from the submarines into what are essentially massive, dirty EMP bombs. If they detonate close enough to a Meridian ship when its shields are in reset cycle, total systems failure, Walker finished. If it works, Morgan cautioned. This is all theoretical. The Admiral placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. Theory is all we have, Alex. And we're out of time. The tactical alert came just as the 5th day of preparation was ending. The Meridian fleet had accelerated their approach and would reach Earth in less than 24 hours, 2 days earlier than their ultimatum had specified. They're trying to catch us unprepared, Walker told his gathered commanders during an emergency briefing. They've probably been monitoring our activities and decided we're becoming too organized. Are we ready? Asked Captain Foster. Walker surveyed the faces of his unlikely military leadership, civilian captains, retired officers, and academic experts. None of them were supposed to be here, fighting humanity's most important battle. All of them had stepped forward without hesitation. No, Walker admitted, but neither are they. They're expecting to face a conventional defense force using outdated military tactics. Instead, they'll be facing Project Patchwork. He activated the holographic display, showing the intricate, seemingly chaotic battle plan they had developed. Position your ships according to this scatter pattern. No formation, no predictable positioning. Each vessel has its own assignment and autonomous authority to act. As the commanders dispersed to their ships, Morgan approached Walker. The radiation pulse generators are installed, but we've only had time to test 12 of them. The rest are, well, theoretical. Walker managed a grim smile. The Meridians think we're flying junk. Let's show them what junk can do when it's in the hands of desperate, creative humans. As Morgan turned to leave, Walker added, and Alex, make sure that last surprise we discussed is ready. If all else fails, we'll need it. The scientist nodded solemnly. It'll be ready, though I hope we never have to use it. Later that night, as Earth's improvised fleet moved into its scattered positions, the Meridian Advance Scouts appeared at the edge of the solar system. Their transmission was brief and dismissive. Your week is not yet complete, but we grow impatient with your pathetic preparations. Prepare to be eliminated. Walker didn't respond. Instead, he gave a simple order to all ships. Activate Project Patchwork. Let them come to us. The first Meridian ships emerged from hyperspace in a dazzling display of light and energy, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the backdrop of stars. Not the entire fleet, just 50 vessels, a mere fraction of their armada, sent forward as a demonstration of force. To the aliens, this small contingent was more than enough to handle Earth's defenses. They're deploying in standard conquest formation, Lieutenant Davis reported, studying the tactical display on the command deck of Walker's flagship, the retrofitted destroyer Dauntless *. Exactly as Colonel Parks predicted. Walker nodded grimly. The Meridians had conquered enough worlds to develop a routine, a methodical approach that had never failed them. They positioned their ships in a precise arrowhead pattern, spreading out to form a wide net designed to intercept any fleeing vessels. All ships maintain radio silence, Walker ordered. Let them think we're scrambling to organize a defense. Earth's fleet remained scattered across the solar system in what appeared to be random positions, some clustered near the moon, others hiding in the shadow of Mars, many drifting seemingly abandoned near the asteroid belt. To the Meridians, it must have looked like panic, like a disorganized mess of vessels without coherent leadership. Commander Vex's transmission came right on schedule. Admiral Walker, observe the first wave of your destruction. His voice carried the same mocking tone as before. Your fleet appears even less organized than I anticipated. Have your captains begun deserting already? Walker didn't respond. Instead, he watched the tactical display as the Meridian vessels moved deeper into the solar system, their sensors sweeping for human ships. Sir, they're approaching the first trigger point, Davis said quietly. Walker keyed his secure channel. Station Alpha, stand by. What the Meridians hadn't realized was that during the previous month, humans had been busy with more than just retrofitting ships. Throughout the solar system, they had positioned what appeared to be abandoned space stations, old orbital platforms, decommissioned satellites, and research outposts. Most had been scheduled for demolition years ago, but had never been removed due to budget constraints. Now those forgotten pieces of space junk were about to serve their final purpose. Station Alpha, execute, Walker ordered. Near Jupiter's orbit, a decrepit research station that had been studying the gas giant storms for decades suddenly powered up. Before the Meridian scouts could react, the station's newly installed energy collectors, hastily constructed from salvaged solar panels, unleashed a focused pulse of radiation directly at the lead Meridian vessel. The pulse struck precisely as the alien ship shields entered their reset cycle. For 0.3 of a second, a small section of the shield disappeared, and through that gap, 20 modified mining drones shot forward like bullets. On the Meridian vessel, alarms would be sounding as the tiny machines buried themselves into the ship's hull, their diamond-tipped drills designed for asteroid mining, now chewing through the alien metal. Seconds later, the drones detonated their EMP charges. The Meridian ship didn't explode. It simply went dark, its systems completely fried from within. First blood to us, Davis whispered. But the Meridians adapted quickly. The remaining scout ships immediately changed formation, their weapons targeting the station that had launched the attack. It was obliterated in seconds. As expected, Walker noted calmly. Stations beta through Echo, execute in sequence. Across the solar system, 4 more seemingly abandoned stations activated, each targeting a different Meridian vessel with the same radiation pulse. 2 more alien ships went dark before the Meridians recognized the threat and began evasive maneuvers. Commander Vex's voice crackled over the communication system, his translated words tight with rage. Primitive trickery. You hide behind space debris like cowards. Walker finally responded, his voice level. Not cowards, Commander. Just making use of what you call junk. The Meridian fleet regrouped quickly, changing tactics. They began systematically destroying every structure in the solar system that wasn't actively moving. Stations, satellites, even debris fields. Phase 1 complete, Walker announced to his scattered fleet. All ships, commence Phase 2. Mining Division, you're up. Near Mars, 30 converted mining vessels that had been powered down to avoid detection suddenly activated their engines. Instead of fleeing, they moved directly toward the Meridian scouts. They're being targeted, Davis reported as the Meridian weapons locked onto the approaching mining ships. They'll be destroyed before they get within range. That's what the Meridians think too, Walker replied. The mining ships made no evasive maneuvers as the alien weapons fire reached out toward them. But at the last possible moment, hundreds of small objects detached from the mining vessels. Escape pods, maintenance drones, and cargo containers, all retrofitted with small engines and the same radiation pulse generators. The swarm spread out, too numerous and too small for the Meridian weapons to target effectively. Many were destroyed, but enough survived to reach their targets. When they detonated, they didn't cause physical damage. Instead, they created dozens of small holes in the Meridian shields, just long enough for the second wave of mining drones to slip through. 4 more Meridian ships went dark. On the command deck of the Dauntless Asterisk, a cheer went up, quickly silenced by Walker's raised hand. "This is just the beginning," he cautioned. "They haven't deployed their main fleet yet." As if summoned by his words, space rippled as more Meridian ships began to arrive. Not 50 this time, but hundreds, including massive capital ships that dwarfed anything in Earth's fleet. "They're calling in reinforcements sooner than we predicted," Morgan observed, entering the command deck with a data tablet. "Our tactics are working better than expected. Or they're taking us more seriously than we thought," Walker countered. "Status of the nuclear option." "Ready," Morgan confirmed. "Though we'll only get one shot at it." The Meridian reinforcements immediately began a systematic attack pattern, destroying anything that registered on their sensors. The human casualties began to mount as ship after ship was targeted and destroyed. "We've lost the Horizon and the Venture Davis reported grimly. "The mining vessel Pioneer is critically damaged." Walker watched the tactical display as nearly 20 human ships were destroyed in rapid succession. "All ships, execute emergency protocol." "I repeat, execute emergency protocol." Throughout the solar system, Earth's vessels suddenly cut power, appearing to be disabled or destroyed. Only minimal life support systems remained active, leaving the ships drifting lifelessly among the genuine debris of battle. The Meridian attack faltered, their sensors no longer able to distinguish between destroyed ships and those playing dead. After several minutes of scanning, the alien fleet began to regroup. Commander Vex's transmission was filled with satisfaction. "A clever tactic, Admiral, but ultimately futile. Your fleet is decimated. Your stations destroyed. What remains of your forces appears to have abandoned the fight." Walker allowed a small smile. "An interesting assessment, Commander. Perhaps you'd like a closer look." On cue, the supposedly abandoned orbital platforms around Earth, defense stations that had been decommissioned decades ago, suddenly powered up. But instead of attacking, they simply activated powerful spotlights, illuminating hundreds of objects that had been hidden in Earth's shadow. Old satellites, decommissioned spacecraft, debris from previous space missions, all had been quietly towed into position during the past week, creating the impression of a massive debris field. "What is this?" Vex demanded. "More junk." "Not just junk," Walker replied. "Trojan horses." At his command, the debris field came alive. What appeared to be broken solar panels unfolded to reveal focused radiation emitters. Derelict satellites oriented themselves toward the Meridian fleet, and at the center of it all, the pride of Earth's old space program, a massive, obsolete space telescope that had been replaced years ago, opened up to reveal something the Meridians couldn't possibly have anticipated. "Target their command ship," Walker ordered. "Fire when ready." The retrofitted telescope, its delicate instruments replaced with a cobbled-together energy weapon composed of parts from a dozen different technologies, fired a concentrated beam of radiation precisely calibrated to the frequency of the Meridian shield reset cycle. The beam struck the Meridian command ship just as its shields entered the vulnerable phase. For a brief moment, a large section of the shield simply vanished. Nuclear option. Deploy now. Walker commanded. From the shadow of the moon, a single missile launched, a modified nuclear warhead salvaged from one of Earth's ancient submarines, now aimed directly at the gap in the command ship's shields. The explosion wasn't intended to destroy the massive Meridian vessel, just to deliver an electromagnetic pulse of unprecedented magnitude directly against its unshielded hull. The effect was immediate and devastating. Not just the command ship, but every Meridian vessel within 1,000 kilometers suddenly lost power, their advanced systems overwhelmed by the crude but effective pulse. Multiple Meridian ships disabled, Davis reported, his voice tight with disbelief. At least 30 vessels showing no power signatures. Walker allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before returning to his command mode. All ships, power up and resume attack pattern. Target the disabled vessels first. As Earth's junk fleet emerged from hiding and moved to engage, Commander Vex's final transmission of the day came through, his translator struggling to convey his mixture of rage and disbelief. This is not warfare as civilized species conduct it. This is humanity fighting for survival, Walker replied calmly. And we're just getting started. The Meridian fleet regrouped with mechanical precision, their remaining ships forming a protective sphere around the damaged command vessel. Emergency power systems had kicked in on most of the disabled ships, but their primary weapons and propulsion systems remained offline, a temporary victory for Earth, but far from decisive. They're adapting to our tactics, Davis observed, pointing to the tactical display where Meridian vessels were now emitting a fluctuating energy field. They've modified their shield frequencies. Our radiation pulses won't work the same way again. Walker had expected this. The Meridians hadn't conquered 12 worlds by being slow learners. Dr. Morgan, what's your assessment? The scientists studied the sensor readings with a frown. They're cycling their shield frequencies randomly now. No predictable pattern to exploit. He looked up at Walker. We need a new approach, and quickly. They're preparing for a counterattack. As if confirming Morgan's words, the Meridian fleet began to move, splitting into smaller battle groups. Their tactics had changed. No longer the arrogant, straightforward approach of an overwhelming force, but the cautious, methodical strategy of a military that now respected its opponent. All ships, this is Admiral Walker. The enemy is adapting. Implement Contingency Delta. Throughout the scattered human fleet, captains acknowledged the order. Contingency Delta wasn't a refined military tactic. It was organized chaos, a plan designed by the video game strategists on Walker's Unconventional Warfare Committee. Each ship had memorized a unique set of seemingly random movements and attack patterns, creating an unpredictable defense that would be difficult to counter. On the bridge of the converted freighter Opportunity Captain Maria Bell read the order with a mixture of dread and determination. Her vessel had once transported grain between Earth and the Martian colonies. Now it carried 200 modified mining drones and a hastily installed weapons system, cobbled together from industrial cutting lasers. Helm, begin Delta sequence, she ordered. Engineering, prepare to deploy countermeasures on my mark. The Opportunity suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward a group of 3 Meridian vessels. To the aliens, it must have appeared suicidal, a civilian ship charging toward military vessels many times its size and power, which was exactly what Bell wanted them to think. As the Meridian ships prepared to fire, Bell gave the order, deploy chaff. The Opportunity released its countermeasures, thousands of small metal fragments, each coated with a reflective material salvaged from the ship's original thermal shielding. The cloud expanded rapidly, creating a dazzling, confusing mess of radar reflections and sensor ghosts. The Meridian targeting systems faltered, unable to distinguish the ship from the chaff. Their weapons fire scattered harmlessly through the cloud of reflective debris. And behind that cloud, using it as cover, came 3 more human vessels, each executing its own unique attack pattern. Similar scenes play out across the battlefield as Earth's fleet implemented Contingency Delta. No 2 ships followed the same pattern, making it impossible for the Meridians to predict where attacks would come from or develop an effective counter-strategy. Back on the Dauntless Asterisk, Walker watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Meridians excel at countering organized military tactics, he explained to his bridge crew. Their entire conquest strategy depends on it, but they've never faced a species that fights like this, without apparent coordination, each unit acting independently. It's working for now, Morgan cautioned, but they're still learning. And we're taking heavy losses. He was right. For every Meridian vessel disabled, 3 or 4 human ships were destroyed. Earth's fleet had started with nearly 500 vessels of various sizes and capabilities. Now, less than 300 remained operational. We need something more, Walker admitted. Dr. Morgan, what about Project Lazarus? Morgan's expression tightened. It's ready, but untested. We have no idea if it will work or just get a lot of good people killed. At this point, those people will be killed anyway if we don't try something drastic, Walker replied, his voice heavy with the weight of command. Begin deployment. Project Lazarus had been Morgan's most controversial idea, a strategy so unorthodox that even Walker had initially rejected it. Throughout the solar system, dozens of human ships that had been genuinely damaged or disabled in the early fighting had been quietly retrofitted by emergency repair teams. Their conventional weapons and engines were beyond repair, but that wasn't what Project Lazarus required. All Lazarus units. This is control. Morgan spoke into a secure channel. Initiate sequence on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Across the battlefield, apparently destroyed human vessels suddenly powered up minimal systems, not enough to move or fight conventionally, but enough to activate the cobbled-together devices that Morgan's team had installed in their ruined hulls. These weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were modified industrial electromagnets, originally designed for moving heavy metal objects in space construction projects. Now they generated powerful magnetic fields directed at the nearest Meridian vessels. The aliens' advanced hull material, so resistant to conventional weapons, possessed one property that Morgan had discovered during his analysis. It was highly susceptible to powerful, oscillating magnetic fields. The effects weren't immediately catastrophic. No explosions or dramatic failures. Instead, the Meridian ships exposed to the fields began to experience subtler problems: navigation errors, weapon malfunctions, communication disruptions. It's working, Morgan reported, watching the sensor data. The magnetic fields are creating micro-disruptions in their systems, not enough to disable them completely, but enough to throw off their precision. Walker nodded. And precision is everything to the Meridians. For a military force that relied on perfect coordination and technological superiority, even small disruptions created cascading problems. Meridian vessels began to collide with each other as their navigation systems provided faulty data. Weapons fired at incorrect targets or failed to fire at all. Taking advantage of the confusion, Earth's remaining combat-capable ships pressed their attacks, focusing on already struggling Meridian vessels. On the Meridian command ship, which had partially recovered from the earlier EMP attack, Commander Vex was livid. His next transmission came through clearly, the anger in his voice transcending the translator's neutral tones. You fight without honor, without proper military discipline. This is not warfare. This is the desperate flailing of savages. Walker allowed himself a tight smile before responding. You're right, Commander. This isn't traditional warfare. It's survival, human style. You came expecting an easy conquest against an inferior opponent. Instead, You found out what happens when a species with nothing to lose gets creative. The battle continued for hours, a chaotic melee unlike anything in recorded military history. Human ships darted between Meridian vessels, deploying makeshift weapons and impromptu tactics. The Meridians struggled to counter strategies that followed no discernible pattern or military doctrine. But despite Earth's innovations, the tide was gradually turning. Human ships were being destroyed faster than they could disable Meridian vessels. Project Lazarus had bought time, but not victory. In the command center of the Dauntless Asterisk, Walker studied the tactical display with growing concern. "We need something more," he muttered, almost to himself. Something they couldn't possibly anticipate. Dr. Morgan, who had been working frantically at a console nearby, suddenly straightened. "I might have something. But it makes our previous plans look conservative by comparison." Walker didn't hesitate. "Tell me." Morgan pulled up a schematic on the main display, a hastily designed modification to the Dauntless Asterisk itself. "We've been targeting their shields and their systems, but what if we target their entire command structure instead?" "How?" Walker asked, studying the unusual design. "We convert the Dauntless Asterisk into essentially one massive EMP bomb," Morgan explained. "Not just the nuclear option we used earlier, something far more powerful. We channel all power, including life support, engineering systems, everything, into one massive pulse directed at their command ship." The implications were clear. That would mean... "Yes," Morgan cut in. "The Dauntless Asterisk wouldn't survive. Neither would anyone on board. But if it works, it would completely disable their command structure, their communication network. Their entire fleet would be in disarray." Walker studied the scientist's face. "You're volunteering to stay on board to make it work?" Morgan nodded. "I'm the only one who fully understands the modifications required. And at this point, Admiral, what choice do we have?" Around them, the tactical display showed more human ships being destroyed every minute. Earth's defensive line was collapsing despite their innovative tactics. "There's always a choice," Walker said quietly. "But sometimes none of them are good." He straightened, his decision made. "Begin the modifications. I'll order non-essential personnel to evacuate." Morgan nodded grimly and turned to implement what might be humanity's last desperate gambit against an enemy that had never expected to face a serious challenge from Earth's collection of space junk. The evacuation of the Dauntless Asterisk proceeded with grim efficiency. Escape pods launched in carefully timed intervals, each one following a different trajectory to avoid creating an obvious pattern for Meridian targeting systems. Walker watched them go from the command deck, now staffed by a skeleton crew of volunteers who understood they would not be leaving. "Last group is away, Admiral," Davis reported, his voice steady despite knowing what lay ahead. Dr. Morgan reports the modifications are at 80% completion. Walker nodded, studying the tactical display. The battle had shifted again. The Meridians had adapted to Project Lazarus, adjusting their systems to compensate for the magnetic interference. They were now systematically destroying the disabled human vessels that had been repurposed as magnetic disruptors. "How much time do we need?" Walker asked, not taking his eyes from the display. 20 minutes minimum," Morgan replied, his hands working furiously as he rewired critical systems. "I'm rerouting the main reactor output through the communication array. It was never designed to handle this kind of power." Walker made a decision. "Lieutenant Davis, send to all remaining combat-capable ships. Operation Final Stand. Authorization Walker Alpha 7. Davis hesitated only briefly before transmitting the order. Operation Final Stand wasn't a conventional military tactic. It was a suicide mission for what remained of Earth's fleet. Every ship would launch a direct assault on the Meridian forces, drawing attention away from the Dauntless Asterisk while Morgan completed his work. Across the battlefield, the captains of Earth's remaining vessels received the order with solemn determination. They had known from the beginning that this might be a one-way mission. Now that possibility had become certainty. On the bridge of the Resilient Captain Foster addressed his crew. "You've all heard the order. Anyone who wishes to take the remaining escape pods has my permission." He paused, looking around at the faces of his crew, miners, engineers, and civilians who had volunteered to defend their planet. "No one will think less of you." Not a single crew member moved. Foster nodded, pride evident in his expression. "Helm, set course directly for the Meridian flagship. Weapons, prepare to fire everything we have. Engineering, divert all power to forward shields." Similar scenes played out on dozens of vessels throughout the solar system as Earth's makeshift fleet prepared for its final act of defiance. The Meridian command ship, still recovering from earlier damage, detected the sudden movement of the human fleet. Commander Vex, watching from his control center, misinterpreted the coordinated attack as desperation. "They commit to a final futile assault," he communicated to his fleet commanders. "Prepare to eliminate them once and for all. The human resistance ends today." The Meridian vessels formed a defensive perimeter around their command ship, their weapons charged and ready. They expected a direct frontal assault, a last desperate charge from a defeated enemy. Instead, the human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each attacking from a different angle, targeting different ships with seemingly random patterns. Some charged directly at Meridian vessels, while others executed complex evasive maneuvers. A few appeared to retreat, only to circle back and attack from unexpected vectors. It was chaos by design, the culmination of Project Patchwork's unconventional warfare doctrine. Aboard the Dauntless Walker watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Those ships won't last long," he observed quietly. "They don't need to," Morgan replied, not looking up from his work. "Just long enough." The first wave of human ships made contact with the Meridian defensive line. The Resilient charged directly at a Meridian cruiser, firing its modified mining lasers at point-blank range. The weapons barely damaged the alien vessel, but the Resilient didn't stop firing even as it collided with the larger ship. The impact breached both hulls, sending debris and bodies into the vacuum of space. Similar scenes of desperate courage played out across the battlefield. Human ships rammed Meridian vessels when their weapons failed. Crews detonated their own engines when they could get close enough to cause damage. It wasn't warfare in any conventional sense. It was sacrifice on a scale the Meridians had never encountered. 15 more minutes, Morgan announced, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. Walker nodded, then turned to Davis. "Open a channel to Commander Vex." The lieutenant complied, and moments later, the alien commander's face appeared on the main screen. Even through the translator, his tone conveyed a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. "Your fleet dies with admirable courage, Admiral, but it dies nonetheless. You have lost." Walker kept his expression neutral. "Perhaps, but before this ends, I'm offering you one last chance to withdraw from our solar system." Vex made the clicking sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You offer us nothing. Your planet will be ours within hours. You might take Earth," Walker conceded, "but at what cost? How many more ships are you willing to lose? How will you explain to your superiors that conquering one supposedly primitive world cost you half your armada?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the alien commander's features. The Meridian Empire hadn't maintained its dominance by accepting Pyrrhic victories. Walker pressed his advantage. "Your mission was to add another obedient species to your empire. Instead, you found a species that would rather die than surrender. What value is a radioactive wasteland populated by the survivors of a species that will never stop fighting you?" Before Vex could respond, a junior officer interrupted, speaking urgently in the Meridian language. The commander's 3 eyes widened as he received the report. "Your ships are deliberately colliding with ours," Vex accused. "This is not warfare. This is madness. This is humanity," Walker replied simply. "And we're full of surprises." He cut the transmission and turned to Morgan. "Status. 5 more minutes. the scientist replied, his hands working with frantic precision. The power coupling is barely holding. Around them, the ship groaned as systems were pushed beyond their design limits. Lights flickered, and warning alarms blared from multiple stations. "We may not have 5 minutes," Davis warned, pointing to the tactical display. 3 Meridian destroyers had broken away from the main fleet and were approaching the Dauntless *. "They figured out what we're doing," Walker calculated rapidly. The Dauntless * had minimal weapons remaining, certainly not enough to fend off 3 Meridian warships. "How close do we need to be for maximum effect?" he asked Morgan. The scientist looked up from his work, understanding the implication. "Ideally within 10 kilometers of their command ship. But Admiral, the modifications aren't complete. If we activate now, will it work?" Walker interrupted. Morgan hesitated. "Maybe, probably. But I can't guarantee." "That's good enough," Walker decided. "Helm, set collision course with the Meridian command ship. Maximum speed." The officer at the helm acknowledged the order without hesitation. The Dauntless * surged forward, its engines straining as it accelerated directly toward the heart of the Meridian fleet. "All remaining power to engines and forward shields," Walker ordered. "We need to get close enough." The approaching Meridian destroyers opened fire, their energy weapons impacting against the Dauntless *'s weakened shields. The human vessel shuddered but maintained its course. "Shields failing," Davis reported as another hit rocked the ship. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 5. Walker gripped the arms of his command chair. "Stay on course." The Meridian command ship grew larger on the view screen as the Dauntless * approached. It was massive, easily 20 times the size of the human vessel. Its weapons were already targeting the approaching threat. 1 minute to impact, the helm officer announced. Morgan looked up from his console. "The modifications are as complete as they're going to get. Ready to initiate on your command." Walker nodded, then addressed the remaining crew. "It has been my honor to serve with each of you. What we do today will be remembered as long as humans exist to tell the story." He turned back to Morgan. "Ready when you are, Doctor." The scientist took a deep breath and positioned his hand over the activation control. "For Earth," he said simply, and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, every system on the Dauntless * went dark simultaneously. The ship seemed to die, until a new kind of energy began to build, visible as crackling blue electricity that raced along the hull. The modified communication array, never designed to channel the energy of an entire starship, began to glow white-hot. The power built exponentially, creating an electromagnetic pulse of unprecedented magnitude. Directed straight at the approaching Meridian command ship, the pulse struck just as the Dauntless * began to break apart under the strain of its own weapon. It passed through the Meridian shields as if they weren't there, not exploiting a weakness, but simply overwhelming them with raw power. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Meridian command ship went completely dark, its systems fried beyond recovery. But the pulse didn't stop there. It cascaded outward, catching dozens of nearby Meridian vessels in its expanding sphere of influence. One by one, the pride of the Meridian fleet went silent, disabled by a weapon born of human desperation and ingenuity. The Dauntless * itself didn't survive to witness its success. The tremendous energy release tore the ship apart, its fragments scattering among the disabled Meridian vessels. Throughout the solar system, both human and Meridian crews watched in awe as nearly a third of the alien fleet suddenly went dark. For several minutes, an eerie silence fell across all communication channels. Then, from the few surviving human vessels, a transmission went out to the remaining Meridian ships. It came from Captain Maria Bell of the Opportunity *, now the highest-ranking officer left in Earth's Defense Force. "Meridian Fleet, this is Acting Commander Bell of Earth Defense. Your command ship is destroyed. Your fleet is in disarray. We offer you this choice. Withdraw from our solar system immediately, or we will activate more weapons like the one you just witnessed. The next pulse is already being prepared. You have 10 minutes to begin retreat." It was a bluff. Earth had no more super weapons to deploy. But the Meridians had no way to know that. All they knew was that a supposedly primitive species had just destroyed their command ship and disabled a significant portion of their fleet using technology they couldn't understand or counter. After 9 tense minutes, the remaining Meridian ships began to move. Not toward Earth, but away. First a few, then dozens, then the entire remaining fleet. Within an hour, long-range sensors confirmed that the Meridian Armada was leaving the solar system. 3 days later, a single Meridian vessel returned. Not a warship, but a diplomatic craft. It carried a message from the Meridian Empire. Earth would be classified as a high-risk, restricted engagement world. In diplomatic terms, it meant the Meridians had decided Earth wasn't worth the cost of conquering. In the aftermath, as humanity began to rebuild its defenses, the story of Admiral Walker, Dr. Morgan, and the junk fleet that saved Earth spread throughout the planet. Monuments were built using pieces of the salvaged ships that had fought so valiantly. Schools taught children about Project Patchwork and the unconventional thinking that had turned apparent weakness into strength. And in space, Earth began construction of a new defense fleet, one that incorporated both advanced technology and the lessons learned from necessity. The new ships didn't hide their improvised nature. They celebrated it, proudly displaying their patchwork design as a reminder that humans would always find a way to survive, no matter the odds. The Meridians and other spacefaring species learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species willing to turn junk into weapons and disadvantage into opportunity. Earth might not have the most advanced fleet in the galaxy, but as the Meridians discovered at tremendous cost, sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the best technology. It's the one with nothing to lose and the creativity to make the impossible possible.